Right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Wells, and I'm the local health improvement planner at the St. Mary's County Health Department. And I'm so excited to be here today with Sheila Gallagher to do our kind of second round of our Ask the Dietitian Nutrition During Pregnancy events. Thank you so much, Sheila, for being here with us today. We're so excited to do this as a follow up to our community baby shower a couple weeks ago. And if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Thank you so much, Jackie, for having me. I'm really happy to be here. The community baby shower was a fantastic event that I was happy to be part of, and I was really glad to see the big turnout that you had. And I'm glad that we're doing this follow up. And I'm just to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a registered dietitian, certified in diabetes education. I love helping people learn about diabetes and nutrition and being pregnant or anything related to those areas. So I am a University of Delaware graduate, which means I am a fighting blue hen. And I got my master's from Marywood University in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And I've been doing this in hospitals and schools and doctors' offices for longer than I care to admit. And I have successfully made the technology leap to be able to do events like this with you. So I'm glad. Thank you for having me.
Great. Thanks so much, Sheila. All right. So we had some questions submitted ahead of time. So thank you to those who did submit those via our Google form. If at any time while you're watching this, you can always submit a question via the comments section on whichever platform you're viewing from, Facebook or YouTube. And we'll be able to incorporate those into Ask Sheila as well. So we'll just start from the top from what we had. And we do have Shan here working in the background to help us with some of these technical pieces because we all know technology nowadays doesn't always run in our favor. So, Shan, if you want to pull up our first question. All right. So, first question is salmon bad for pregnant women?
Salmon is not bad for pregnant women. It's actually recommended that you try to include salmon or a non bottom feeder fish a few times a week. And it's the bottom feeder fishes that have the bad reputation for possible carcinogens related to something called PCPs, which I looked up just about 40 minutes ago. But if you asked me to tell me what it stands for right now, I wouldn't be able to do it. So, but anyway, it's a group of liquid chemicals, harmful potential carcinogens that accumulate in the bottom muck of a body of water. So, bottom feeders can have a greater exposure to PCPs, and there's potential risk to pregnant women, as well as higher levels of mercury. But salmon is a great choice. We could probably talk about the benefits of wild caught or farm raised. That's a whole nother conversation. If anybody has a question about that, feel free to put it out there and we can go into that. But for right now, we'll just say salmon is not a bad choice. It is a good choice for pregnant women.
Great. Now I know tuna. I believe tuna is one of those fish with the mercury levels that you're supposed to kind of limit the consumption, correct?
Correct. Tuna would be one to limit.
Okay, great. So another one on those kind of dietary restrictions, and sorry, Shan, I just stole your job and clicked it. So is deli meat really something that I need to avoid?
I would say yes, unfortunately. It's higher sodium, way higher sodium than you want to take in, whether you're pregnant or not. It's generally recommended for everyone to limit or eliminate deli meats. When you start getting into like, oh, well, can't I just have low sodium ham? Well, that's pretty much like saying I'm having a low sodium hot dog. It doesn't make it a low sodium food, it makes it a lower sodium food. So then you want to also consider the processing and the addition of potential nitrates, which has been linked with higher cancer rates. So the answer is, unfortunately, yes, you probably do need to limit or eliminate deli meats.
And would that count for the ones that are prepackaged as well as ones that you get cut fresh at the deli counter?
Yes, whether they come wrapped up in paper or plastic, it doesn't make any difference.
Great. So good additions instead of that, or replacements, is fresh cooked chicken. You can make a sandwich out of that instead, right?
Yes, roast off meats in advance, slice them up thin. They go well on sandwiches. If you're needing to, pack a lunch, London broil is another good lean cut of meat that you can slice thin for a sandwich if you want to roast beef. And same with turkey breast. If you want to roast off something like that and slice it thin. However, you want to watch the sodium content in prepackaged turkey cuts also.
Right. Yeah, I think that was something we talked about a little bit last time, was the meal prepping. So that's a great one to meal prep. You could try to meal prep meats for sandwiches for the week, and then you're not relying back on those kind of deli meats.
Exactly. That's a good point.
All right, Shannon, if you want to pull up our next question. So this one kind of goes for that post-pregnancy new mom phase. So should my nutritional intake increase or decrease or stay the same while I am breastfeeding?
The most calories you will ever need in your life is when you're breastfeeding. So your needs go up significantly, even higher than the needs you have when you're pregnant. So take advantage of that time and enjoy a, wide diet of healthy foods. You have the freedom to include some of your favorite foods that maybe you were limiting before because you didn't want to gain too much weight. But now's your opportunity to indulge a little bit. You definitely need higher protein, higher calorie needs when you're breastfeeding.
Right. And lots more water, correct?
Oh my goodness, yes. You need to make sure that you have enough water to produce that milk. So definitely increased hydration is required.
Right.
Another question I'll just add is there actually is some research that the cruciferous vegetables may produce gas in the baby. If you're eating a whole lot of broccoli while you're breastfeeding and you notice the baby's a little fussy, it might be because you were overdoing some of those cruciferous vegetables.
That's some good advice. Yeah, kind of monitoring what you were eating beforehand to kind of associate it back to any tummy issues that the baby's having.
Exactly.
Great. All right. Next question. Is it safe to consume alcohol while breastfeeding or if you're pumping?
We do have research which shows the alcohol is transferred to the breast milk. So it is a good idea to talk to your doctor about that and make sure that you follow his recommendations. Perhaps a glass of wine occasionally won't necessarily affect the baby, but it's something you want to be aware of that it does get transferred.
Yeah, so kind of just monitoring and using it as a treat every once in a while, kind of, and confirming that with your doctor or your dietitian ahead of time so that you have that guidance specifically for yourself.
Exactly.
Perfect. All right, I think this next one, keeping with that drink theme, goes to energy drinks. So, are energy drinks safe to consume in moderation? And it didn't say specifically when, but we'll kind of hit on both sides of it. So, in moderation while pregnant and or while breastfeeding.
Okay. Oh, pregnant or breastfeeding. Well,
Yep.
thank you for that. I'm glad you asked, Pet. Many people really enjoy these prepackaged, pre-bottled energy drinks today. Some energy drinks are fine in that they are flavored waters with B vitamins added. Limited number of water-soluble vitamins should be fine. Others, though, have a lot of excess caffeine added. So you probably want to limit or eliminate caffeine during pregnancy as well as during while you're breastfeeding. So I would suggest that they're not necessary to include in your diet.
Now, is there a specific amount? I believe I've heard it before. A specific amount of caffeine that you should limit while pregnant?
So the jury's out on that. I would ask your doctor what he feels is comfortable for you to have while you're pregnant. Perhaps 1 cup a day would be approved by your doctor like again, everything in moderation, but it's best to avoid caffeine and alcohol during pregnancy in general, just as a safe guideline.
Right, right. Great, thank you. All right, I think we're sticking with the drinks on this one. And this is actually something that Shannon and I have discussed in kind of great lengths. Is in regards to raw juices and fresh pressed juices, and homemade almond milk, so it's non-pasteurized drinks. If those are safe to drink while pregnant.
This is a great question, Jackie. I'm glad you asked. That actually challenged me. I went ahead and did a little research on this, and there is some research out there that suggests unpasteurized juices may contain listeria, so it's better to avoid things like raw apple cider. If you're pressing your own juices at home and washing your fruits and vegetables very well, the research is not conclusive.
Okay.
So I would suggest, as far as juices, talk to your doctor, but definitely avoid the raw, unpasteurized purchased ones like apple cider. And then just be cautious about using safe techniques at home in your kitchen. As far as, there's a big tr- trend now towards quote unquote juicing and using cold pressed juices. Those juices do have a higher nutrient value. So in that sense, yes, they would have health benefits. But on the other hand, like I said before, you don't want to risk listeria. So be safe in your kitchen, talk to your doctor. I like to share, moving on to almond milk, the fact that Maryland State Legislature recently passed that products that are non-dairy are really not legally allowed to use the term milk anymore because they're technically not milk. There's no lactose or anything in them. They actually count as a fat in your meal plan if you're following a meal plan because nuts are fat. They're highest in fat of the 3 macronutrients. So while the media and advertising agencies are promoting that they do have a little bit of protein, just know that they're really high in calories and most of those calories come from fat. So if you're making home pressed almond milk, I would just stress again, make sure you're using good sanitation, good clean technique in your home, and in moderation. If you're using a little bit in your coffee or just a little bit over your cereal, it should be safe.
That's interesting. I didn't even think about the fact of I know that nuts are high in fat, and I didn't even think about the fact that that's going to be extracted when you're making a home nut milk of some sort.
Right.
So that's very interesting. I was just learning. My baby cousin drinks walnut milk, so that was a new one to me. But I didn't even think about that fat content.
Right, exactly. If you look at the calories, there's little carbohydrate there at all.
Yep, and that's something I think compared to cow's milk, the difference where you could get skim milk or you can get 1%, 2% or whole milk. When it comes to the nut milks, you probably can't limit that in any way other than maybe watering it down slightly to cut it. So,
Right, exactly. Adding more water would do that, reduce the fat content. But I'm glad you brought up the different percentages of milk because sometimes people are confused. They don't realize that those different percentages of milk are strictly referring to the fat content.
yeah.
If it's all the same amount of carbohydrate and it is simple carbohydrate. So if you're watching how much carbohydrate you're taking in and where you're getting it from, you know, choosing skim milk might not necessarily be a better choice if you're watching your blood sugars.
Okay.
So just be aware that the carbohydrate content doesn't vary, only the fat content does.
That's interesting, especially because I know some people choose to go onto a low carbohydrate diet or a low fat diet. They typically don't kind of go with both. So
Right.
it depends on which direction you're going that you want to monitor your milk intake.
Exactly. And there are definite guidelines for people with diabetes to follow both, but we really focus in on eliminating refined carbohydrates, concentrated sweets, and then limiting your total fat and total saturated fat to less than 10%.
Right. Very interesting. I'm learning new things today. I love it. So, all right, if we could go to that next question. Honestly, we were talking about milk, so perfect. If I am lactose intolerant, what dairy substitutes can I have to ensure that I'm getting sufficient amounts of calcium and vitamin D?
I love this question, Jackie. I always like to start by sharing the fact that we're the only mammal on the planet that continues to drink milk after the age of 1. So
So
we
funny.
don't necessarily need to drink milk in order to be healthy. There's a lot of other great food choices that can give you enough calcium. Green beans, salmon, all your beans, lentils, bok choy or Chinese cabbage, baked beans, um, tofu. I mean, there's an awful lot you can choose from. Your leafy greens in general, nuts and beans, they all give you a lot of calcium. But simply, green beans are in season. So go ahead with that. And we were talking about salmon being a a safe choice for someone who's pregnant. So salmon's also going to give you those omega-3 fatty acids, which are linked with lower risk of cancer. So I say I like bok choy the best because you burn more calories chewing it than it actually gives you.
It's
It's
just
like,
like celery.
yes.
Perfect. And I
Mhm.
love hitting on the buying local. I think that that's super important, especially it's summertime. Our farmers markets, I know we have 3 kind of county run farmers markets in St. Mary's County that are all open and have those fresh in season locally grown vegetables available.
Right. Definitely want to try to buy local if you can. And you really know your farmer. And when you do the farm to table thing, you're really ensuring a nutrient value because those, vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, bioflavonoids that you're eating those fruits and vegetables for, they haven't been lost during transport. They haven't been lost through refrigeration in a truck driving across the country. The levels are higher. So big proponent of eating locally if you can.
Right. And I think locally, I know Maryland does the buy local challenge every year. And I always love that week because there's a new cookbook that comes out and tells you kind of what's fresh that week and local things to Maryland that you can grow. I think that that's generally the end of July or beginning of August, I think, is when that challenge is. So
Yeah, we should all. I thank you for telling me about that. I've heard of it, but I didn't know when it was coming, so I'm glad to know. And it's always fun to peruse through a new cookbook using foods that are available locally.
definitely, definitely. All
Oh,
right.
rhubarb! Wait, I forgot to say rhubarb. Talking about local, you can get that in the farmers market now,
Yep.
and it's high in calcium. But you probably will have to add a little sugar.
Yep. I talk about that with my parents often. They love rhubarb, and I cannot get past that taste. So
Uh, I
it
have a I have a great dessert recipe that's rhubarb, but we might not want to post it until we're all breastfeeding again.
just
when
a
when you
little high in calories.
Yes, yes.
Too funny. All right, our next question up is what are some tips for busy or working moms who have little time to prepare meals throughout the weeks? And kind of what are your thoughts on those meal kits like HelloFresh or Blue Apron that people can order and have kind of that recipe delivered to their house with all of the ingredients?
Excellent question, Jackie. This really speaks to our busy lifestyle today. And my main answer is always whatever works for you. So, meal prepping, taking one day a week to prepare 2 meals in double quantities is a great way to get meals ready to eat at the end of a busy workday. Or if you're juggling other kids' sports schedules or activities, you don't want to have to stop for fast food on your way home or feed the kid feed your child a large meal before soccer, whatever situation that you're being challenged by. So pick a day that's not as busy for you, maybe on the weekend, roast off a chicken with stuffing, cook the whole pound or two of green beans, and you've probably got at least 2 meals. And then I like to always say, use your entire appliance. Have something on the stove while you've got something in the oven. So you can maybe do some lean pork chops with a little bit of olive oil that you've seasoned, have them cooking while you're roasting your chicken. And then you've got not only 2 meals from the chicken, but 2 meals from the chicken and 2 meals from the pork chop.
That's great.
So that's one tip. And also take advantage of sectioned plates, the ones that are microwavable and dishwasher proof safe, that you can get them on Amazon, like 3 or 4 for less than $10, or buy them in the dollar store, the little fake Tupperware storage containers. Have those ready to go in your refrigerator. So you open the door and you just have to literally pull one out and throw it into the microwave. So meal prepping is a great way to go. HelloFresh or any of Apple Basket, or there's a whole lot out there now. Certainly, if your wallet allows for it, then that could be an option for you. They tend to be a little pricey, but nutrient wise, the only thing I found is that some of them are a little bit high in sodium. That being said, they're a lot lower in sodium than fast food or a restaurant meal, maybe, or just grabbing something unhealthy. So it's always a stepwise process where, or if not a stepwise process, what I might say is, where are you along the path? Are you skipping the meal? Are you having a fast food meal? Are you coming in and cooking and eating at 9 p.m., which is a little later? Or, what's the next step? Could you make the leap to cook extra on the weekends? If you can't, then, go with one of these meal delivery services. That's certainly a good option.
I like touching on the expense factor because I've definitely found that with those meal prep kits that I've looked into ordering them, and they're terribly expensive. It's great though; it's convenient. It's nice to have, but especially right now when the cost of things are soaring and people are kind of pinching pennies a little bit more, finding what's affordable for you and also healthy is kind of a key.
It is. It truly is. And be wary if you do search one up that you want to trial. They most of the time will have order once or order every month. So don't let it automatically renew for you
Right.
if that's not what you're interested in doing.
Right, yeah, having that option to kind of back off when you need to.
Right.
That's great. I think that's tough, especially when pregnant. I know a lot of my friends while pregnant have gone through that phase where they have to eat every 2 hours. So if you can meal prep those little snacks, even if you're just eating a little bit of chicken as a snack partway through the day, it's nice to have it meal prepped and ready to go for you.
Definitely.
So, all right. Our next question, I believe, has to do with BMI. So, I have a BMI that is less than 18.5. I think that's the less than sign. And I'm expected to gain 28 to 40 pounds during my pregnancy. What foods can I eat to help put on healthy weight rather than excessive weight?
This is a great question. And let's start by explaining what is the BMI. BMI is a mathematical representation of your height over weight squared. So less than 20 is considered inadequate energy stores. 20 to 25 is close to your ideal body weight. Anything between 25 and 30 is overweight and approaching obesity. Anything over 30 is considered obese. And we've got class one, class two, and class three. Anything over 40 is considered morbid obesity. So someone who's got a BMI of less than 18 really does need to gain a little bit more weight during their pregnancy. So we're looking at one of my favorite topics, which is nutrient density, which is getting the biggest bang for your nutrition bite. Each bite you take should have a lot of nutrition, should have carbohydrate, protein, fat, vitamins, minerals. So you want to make sure that, like, let's use the example of a 300-calorie breakfast. 300-calorie breakfast might be one donut and a glass, or one or two donuts and a glass of juice, or it could be one egg, two slices of toast, and an orange. So if you compare the nutrient density of those two meals, although the multicolored sprinkles on the donuts might be very appealing, really the eggs and toast and fruit is a much better choice.
Right. I think that's the fun one. Yeah, balancing your desire for that sweet with kind of what the my plate, the ideal plate is with your protein, your whole grains, your vegetables, things like that.
Yes, exactly. Following the recommended guidelines, USDA myplate.gov is a free nutrition resource that is just wonderful set of resources there for you, free of charge. Also, the eating to put on healthy weight. You mentioned timing of meals and being hungry. So, eating more frequently would be a great way to make sure you're getting adequate calories and protein. So up to 6 times a day, depending on what works for your schedule, would help with a healthy weight. And it doesn't have to be Thanksgiving meal each time you eat. It might be as simple as a cheese stick and some low-fat crackers to help you gain a few extra calories throughout the day. The thing you do want to watch for is sudden weight gain, sudden large weight gain. That's when you want to make sure you're checking in with your doctor often, and definitely don't want to have any weight loss.
Right, right. And is there an ideal kind of per week weight gain that a pregnant woman should be looking for, or is it kind of more just sporadic and gradual throughout their pregnancy?
Everybody's an individual and gains weight in their own way throughout the pregnancy. You might find you're not gaining weight for a while and then you put on a pound or two, but the recommended weight gain is really not as large as you would think, as we're led to believe. A pregnant woman doesn't need to overeat a whole lot of calories. You really only need about 400 extra calories per day when you're pregnant. And that's as simple as a half a turkey sandwich.
Right.
So it's really not as much food as you think it might be.
Interesting. Okay, great. Thank you. So that next question that we've got has to do with kind of right at the beginning of pregnancy. I mean, how can being overweight or obese going into pregnancy cause problems?
Jackie, this is a great question because it touches on so many different issues. First off, you want to know that being overweight when you start your pregnancy could complicate your weight gain. We don't want you to gain excess weight during your pregnancy. It could also contribute to problems with blood pressure. You don't want to get into a situation where you may have heard of the condition preeclampsia, where there's issues with blood pressure later on in the pregnancy. You also want to make sure that the baby's not going to get too large for a safe delivery, and you're at greater risk for just diabetes during pregnancy, especially if you have a family history. So that fetal macrosomia, which is what is a large baby for delivery, there are other risks, like could the baby get stuck in the birth canal? Would that lead to congenital defects? Would the baby have something called shoulder dystocia because they actually have to manually, help get the baby out of the birth canal? So those are all potential risks. If your baby gets too large, if you start off overweight, that doesn't mean that any of that's going to happen. What it means is we're going to watch your weight more closely so that you don't gain too much weight during the pregnancy.
And I think that's I know it's something that we're working on constantly, and it's part of what this grant that we have right now in regards to gestational diabetes is that if you are of childbearing age or you're thinking about getting pregnant, kind of taking that as a consideration and trying to get yourself to a healthy weight to go into pregnancy as healthy as possible.
Exactly. That's great that you said that, Jackie. I work with many people who say, well, I have a 1 or a 2-year-old, maybe in another year or 2 I'll try to have another child. And really that year or 2 is a great time to be working on your own health. If you're not back to your pre-pregnancy weight, you want to start working on that. And if you have a history of gestational diabetes or a family history of diabetes, getting your blood sugar checked is not a bad idea. So you want to go into the pregnancy with target blood glucose goals at your ideal body weight, and then you're setting yourself up for a healthy pregnancy.
Now, kind of off, not off topic, but gestational diabetes, it puts you at risk for type 2 diabetes later on, correct?
Correct. Up to 65% of women with diabetes during pregnancy develop type 2 diabetes within 3 to 5 years if they don't make those lifestyle changes through diet and exercise.
Right. So something to kind of keep in mind that if you are ever diagnosed with gestational diabetes, to continually be talking with your doctor or meeting with a dietitian or working in healthy exercise and things like that, so you can kind of work on that and be monitoring it as you go through kind of life and your health process.
Yes, that's great that you point that out, Jackie. With prediabetes being a national epidemic as well as diabetes, it's huge that you're aware of your your own health status, because you don't want to start a pregnancy with higher blood sugars. You want to follow up after you have the baby with your doctor and stay on top of your own health, and don't allow yourself to be overwhelmed with caring for the baby and the family and neglect your own health needs. So it's crucial that you get to your own postpartum follow-ups, that the doctor is checking your blood sugar and monitoring your weight, regardless of whether or not you're even considering another pregnancy, but so that you can avoid developing type 2 diabetes.
I think that's important. I think the general follow up is a 6 week follow up appointment, but that doesn't mean you have to necessarily wait that 6 weeks. You can always set up an appointment with your doctor to kind of follow up sooner about other concerns as well. So you know that you're making sure you're taking care of your own health as well as your baby's health after your pregnancy.
Yes, most definitely.
All right. So our next question is what are some of the risks of gestational diabetes? And what can I do early in my pregnancy to reduce my risk of having gestational diabetes?
So I mentioned a couple of the risks in the last answer. So we don't want you to have a baby too large for a normal delivery. We want to keep that fetal macrosomia down. We don't want that to happen because of those risks of the baby being too large for a natural delivery, getting stuck in the birth canal, perhaps experiencing shoulder dystocia or problems with the back and spine of the baby. So we want to watch your weight gain and avoid all complications of along those lines, avoiding high blood pressure, sudden unexplained weight gain, all risks of gestational diabetes. Early on, you want to make sure that if you have a history that you get your blood glucose level checked, and you're going to have that glucose tolerance test during your pregnancy. So keeping an eye, going to those tests. Don't skip those tests saying, oh, I don't have to worry about diabetes during pregnancy. No one in my family's ever had that before. So we just make sure that you're going to all your prenatal visits and getting the best possible prenatal care.
If someone has had gestational diabetes in a previous pregnancy, can making sure to consciously be looking at your nutritional intake and looking at your exercise early in your pregnancy, can that make a difference in a second or third pregnancy after being diagnosed with gestational diabetes previously?
Yes, it can make a very positive difference. I think the way you phrased your question is that if they're aware, if they're making those positive changes, can that make an impact? And the answer is most definitely yes. It will reduce your risk of diabetes during pregnancy in future pregnancies. I like to remind people, though, that you have to be your own best health advocate. If you've got a history of high blood sugars during pregnancy and you're also overweight or obese, it's very real that you need to be continuing to check your blood glucose levels with each doctor's visit so that you don't have, make sure you don't have what we call previously undiagnosed diabetes starting a pregnancy. Many people walk around with elevated blood glucose levels and they don't even realize it. So let's say on the opposite end of things, you have had a history of diabetes in pregnancy and you don't get those checkups and then you get pregnant again, you're exposing yourself to the risk of having diabetes right from the get-go, right from the very start of your pregnancy. So for that reason, we would really want you to be even more attentive to your food choices and your exercise habits. As far as food choices go, the diabetes diet, let's face it, is a healthy diet for all Americans. So, getting to those, awareness of, yes, I really do need the fiber all the time, or yes, I really do need to have lots and lots of water to be healthy. I do need to eat lots of fruits and vegetables. This is many times, a process for people to say, yes, I want to embrace this as part of my daily life. So doing so early on, following the diabetes guidelines early on or all the time would be a great, great way to go. As far as following, I think you're going to get to this in another question, but there are specific guidelines, dietary guidelines for diabetes in pregnancy. They're actually a little bit tighter target blood glucose goals, a little bit tighter guidelines, because it's all about those blood glucose levels. That's what is going to lead to the baby getting too large for a normal delivery. There's also increased risk of childhood obesity and childhood asthma in people who have diabetes, the babies of people who have diabetes during pregnancy. So you're trying to avoid those effects for the babies also.
It's all about that prevention factor.
Exactly.
So, yeah, so let's kind of follow up into that next question about nutrition and lifestyle management recommendations. So, if you are diagnosed with gestational diabetes, some immediate things that you can do to your nutrition and lifestyle.
Number one, give up all sugar from the sugar bowl. So I like to do the little vocabulary lesson and say, carbohydrate is the nutrient that's in food. Sugar is what the white powdery stuff that's in the sugar bowl and added to foods. And glucose is what's in the blood. So kind of work with that framework. So number one, eliminate sugar from the sugar bowl. That means also eliminate all foods that have sugar added to it. So cake, cookies, candy, donuts, Danish brownies, ice cream. Don't add any sugar to your coffee or tea. That includes honey. A lot of people try to say, oh, it's a natural sweetener, I can use it. But it does the same thing to the blood glucose level that sugar from the sugar bowl does. That also includes sweetened beverages. So soda and sweet tea would need to go. And then when we get a little farther, we let people know that fruit is actually restricted. So we limit it to one serving per meal and no juice at all. Juice, we know, is a treatment for hypoglycemia or low blood glucose. So we know what it does to the blood glucose level. We know it's going to send it up within 5 minutes. So we ask people who have gestational diabetes to not drink juice at all, to get their fruit servings in by eating whole fruits. And then after you eliminate the sugar from the sugar bowl and limit your fruit, the next thing would be to eat within an hour of waking up. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. That luxury of having your coffee and pittering around reading the newspaper for a few hours is not going to help your blood glucose levels. We want you to eat. And that's because it's not just a story of your pancreas and your insulin, it's also related to your liver and your glucagon levels. So now I'm jumping to talking about the hormones behind the condition. So it's your glucose levels are regulated by these two hormones, insulin and glucagon. And if you eat breakfast within an hour of waking up, the hormone responsible for raising your blood glucose is not going to be working anymore. It's going to recognize that you've got food on board. So that's the importance of eating breakfast sooner rather than later. And then no skipping or delaying meals. Eat every few hours or at least 3 to 4 times per day. Those would all be the most important guidelines for gestational diabetes.
Great, that's all really great advice. I like referring to it as avoiding completely those sugar from the sugar bowl. I think that's an important factor to take in, and then kind of looking at as those three different vocab terms.
Yes, and I think it's helpful for to help people kind of grapple with all the confusion out there surrounding nutrition. Well, I'm supposed to be on a low carbohydrate diet, and then I point out to them good healthy carbohydrate choices, and I say, maybe you want to be on a lower carbohydrate diet. You don't want to eliminate carbohydrate. You really can't eliminate carbohydrate, protein, or fat from your diet. But getting back to the sugar from the sugar bowl idea, you also want to know that the American Heart Association puts in its position paper, there is no human requirement for sugar from the sugar bowl or sucrose. In fact, the American Heart Association puts limits on how much can be included without being detrimental to your health. I think it's like 6 teaspoons, but it's very limited the amount that you can take in without having negative health effects.
That's interesting. Very interesting. So this next one kind of rolls in along those same topics. So with gestational diabetes, you talked about those carbohydrates. So, can you manage your gestational diabetes by limiting carbs and fat?
The answer is yes, most definitely. But the only way that you know if your dietary changes are working is if you're checking your blood glucose yourself. So it's recommended by most obstetricians that pregnant women with gestational diabetes check their blood glucose themselves daily. And depending on what kind of insurance you have, the cost of all the supplies would be covered. If you have a high deductible or a significant copay, I spend time advising people about what the best meter for them is. And I often say, go to Walmart, get the Rely On. That's their brand. It's FDA approved. It's a very reliable meter, and they have several different ones in their product line, and they're affordable. You don't need a prescription to get one. You can get a meter for less than $20, and the strips or the cost of supplies, if you're using a Walmart meter, is less than $10 for 50 strips. So it can be a more affordable option for you. But if you have gestational diabetes and you have health insurance, most times your insurance will cover some sort of meter for you to check your blood sugar yourself. So that's a long-winded answer, but yes, there's definitely diet controlled gestational diabetes by limiting carbs. But the only way you know if what you're doing is working is by checking your blood glucose levels. And finally, as an answer to that, I feel like I can't say enough about this question. You need a certain amount of carbohydrate, protein, and fat during your pregnancy. You want to make sure that you're eating adequately for the growth and development of your baby and a healthy pregnancy. So while the question's phrased by saying, can I limit carbs? I would suggest that you eliminate sugar and then ensure that you have adequate nutrients.
I think that's a great way to kind of phrase it, that you still need these things. You don't want to be completely eliminating them. You need them for a balanced nutritional intake. But it's being conscious, and I think that's important to harp on the fact that it's being aware, it's monitoring your glucose levels, not just when you go into the doctor for your next follow-up appointment, but just making sure that you're aware, you're seeing how certain foods affect you and things like that.
That is really well said. It's the awareness and the mindfulness of your own health. Don't allow your personality to manifest itself in such a way that you say, oh, well, my doctor told me I'm okay, so I must be okay.
Right.
So, getting back to being your own best health advocate, know what the American Diabetes Association position statement says. Know that you have a family history of this, and it's important for you to stay on top of it. Know your numbers and know what the numbers should be. Know your targets and then know where you're at so that you can make further changes to get to your goals.
Well, I think that that was our last question for the afternoon. If anybody has any other questions, after the fact, if you're viewing this later on, feel free to submit them to us via email at stmaryspartnership@gmail.com. We'll be happy to follow up with Sheila for you or connect you with her to kind of set up a one-on-one session, and kind of keep this conversation rolling. I think it's really important to keep talking about nutrition, especially during such an important time in a woman's life when she's expecting a new little one, kind of moving through all of those different changes that come along with that.
I'm happy. I was happy to be here, and I'm so excited that we were able to do this tonight. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sheila. We appreciate it. Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.